Hey, what's up guys, it's Otaku Talks here, and today I am back with another video. But today is going to be a little different as I have a philosophical video for you guys today. A philosophical video on One Piece at that. Now, I recently just started One Piece not too long ago, and I'm on chapter 170. I'm in the Alabasta arc, and out of these 170 chapters, Usopp is currently my favorite character, so why not show some love to this underrated character by making a video on him. With that being said, make sure you guys like and subscribe and comment, and maybe I'll bring some more philosophy type videos for the rest of the Straw Hat crew. Now, let's get into it. When people normally think about the bravest characters in One Piece, they usually think of heroes like Monkey D. Luffy or Zoro, and not Usopp. And this will be pretty normal as Usopp lies constantly, he exaggerates stories about giant monsters, massive pirate fleets, and heroic adventures. And whenever danger appears, Usopp panics and he's pretty much the first one to run. And compared to the rest of the Straw Hat crew, this makes Usopp look like a coward, and even a very massive part of his character accentuates this, with Usopp's long nose being a resemblance of Pinocchio, the famous character whose nose grew whenever he lies. But here, Usopp's nose is already long, so we can assume that lying is ingrained into his character. But something interesting happens when you start paying closer attention to his character. Despite all the fear, despite all the lies, Usopp repeatedly chooses to stand and fight whenever it matters the most. And throughout my read of One Piece currently, noticing Usopp's character raised an interesting question. What if Usopp isn't actually a coward? And what if his fear is exactly what makes him the bravest Straw Hat? And hopefully today I can show you the symmetry between the philosophy of courage and Usopp. Now, before we get to courage and the philosophy of courage and how this applies to Usopp, first we must ask ourselves, what is courage? The philosopher Aristotle had an interesting definition of courage. He argued that courage sits between two extremes. On one side is cowardice, running away from every danger, and on the other side is recklessness, charging into danger without thinking. True courage lies somewhere in the middle. It's the ability to act whenever fear is present, and this is exactly where Usopp lives, directly in the middle of recklessness and cowardice. Unlike most characters in anime, Usopp feels fear intensively. He panics, he runs away, he hesitates. But even when the moment truly matters, he comes back and he stands his ground, and oftentimes he fights. Now, let's talk about fear and why that matters. Fear is usually treated as a weakness. In most stories, the hero is fearless. Even in this story of One Piece, Luffy is fearless and he lies on the extreme end of recklessness, and this is often told to Luffy by the crewmates themselves. But fear actually serves an important purpose. Fear tells us when something is dangerous. It tells us when something could hurt us, and without fear, courage wouldn't exist at all. Because courage only matters when there is something to overcome. And that's what makes Usopp so interesting. Because unlike most heroes, Usopp feels fear more strongly than anybody else on the crew would. Even where I'm at right now in the Alabasta saga, Princess Vivi often shows more courage than Usopp on many occasions. Even when we first meet Princess Vivi, she's acting as a double agent. This means every time Usopp stands and fights, that courage is something he had to actively choose. And this also reveals something important. The difference between confidence and bravery. Confidence means you believe you will succeed, while bravery means acting even when you're not sure you will. And a character that contrasts with as well is Luffy. Luffy is incredibly confident. He rushes into battle without hesitation because he trusts his strengths, while Usopp is the polar opposite. He often believes he might lose. He often believes he might get hurt, but he still chooses to fight anyway. And that's why Usopp's courage feels differently from other heroes in the story. His bravery doesn't come from confidence, but it comes from overcoming doubt. Usopp's bravery and courage contains the perfect symmetry for him to realize his dream. Usopp constantly repeats one dream throughout the story. His dream is to become a brave warrior of the sea, just like his father. And I think the important word here is become. Usopp doesn't say he is brave. Usopp says that he wants to become brave, and that shows some interesting self-reflection on Usopp's part, as Usopp acknowledges that bravery for him isn't something he was born with. His bravery is something that he's trying to build through his action. Every time he stands his ground despite fear, every time he moves one step closer to the person he wants to become, even if that means lying or embezzling stories of him already being a brave warrior. Now, Usopp and Pinocchio draws a lot of symbolism to each other, mainly due to Usopp's nose being exactly exaggeratedly long, but they contrast in two different ways. Whenever Pinocchio lies, it's usually to avoid responsibility. Whenever Usopp lies, he's usually telling stories about the hero he wished he could become. Stories about defeating enemies, stories about exploring the seas, stories about becoming a great warrior. In other words, what I'm trying to say is Usopp imagines bravery long before he actually becomes brave. His stories aren't just exaggerations, they're aspirations. They're a vision of the person he hopes to become. And I think Usopp's courage answers the question of why Usopp is so relatable. Because when you look at the world, on average, most people aren't fearless heroes. Most people feel exactly what Usopp feels on a daily basis. As humans, we feel fear, we feel doubt, we feel uncertainty. And when people think of bravery, they often imagine someone like Luffy, someone who runs right into danger without a fear in the world. And through Usopp's exaggerations, we see ourselves in him, because in many of us, we have this fear of the world. We have doubt, we have uncertainty. And just like Usopp, most of us on first glance do what he does. But when we really need to, we are capable of standing our ground. And that's what real courage is. Someone who's scared, someone who hesitates, but that someone still decides to stand up anyway. And this courage becomes extremely clear when we compare Usopp to Luffy. In my first 170 chapters reading, Luffy rarely experiences fear. When danger appears, he simply moves forward. His courage feels natural, almost like instinct. Luffy represents the courage of legendary heroes, but Usopp represents something completely different. Usopp's courage requires a struggle. He has to choose bravery again and again, and that makes his courage deeply human, because most people aren't fearless like Luffy. Most people feel exactly what Usopp feels. At the beginning of the story, Usopp tells stories about being a great warrior of the sea. At the time, those stories sound like ridiculous lies, but maybe those stories were never really lies. Maybe they were just the first step towards becoming the person he wanted to become. Because sometimes the stories we tell about who we want to become are the first steps toward actually becoming that person. And that might make Usopp the bravest character in One Piece. Hey guys, if you made it to the end of the video, thank you so much for watching it throughout the whole thing. And if this video does well, I might make it a series, because I really like philosophy and I've really been getting into One Piece as well. If this video does good, I can keep bringing out more philosophy type videos on anime, and even I can do a whole series on the characters of One Piece themselves. Thank you all so much. If you made it towards this part of the video, comment down below your favorite One Piece character, and that is it. It's been your boy Otaku Talks, and I am out.